Hi everybody, it's Judy here. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video, I want to talk about my Hoya collection. I know there are so many varieties of Hoyas out there and one day I will own them all. But in today's video, I want to share 6 varieties that I own and talk about them with you guys. There's anything I really need to say other than thank you for watching today's video, thank you for subscribing, and thank you for giving the video a thumbs up or a thumbs down, depending how you feel about it. Let me know. I want to touch a little bit on Hoya care needs. I know because there are so many varieties of Hoya out there that it's not going to be the same across the board for all of them, but the care for these particular ones that I do own is round about the same, and they keep to the general rule of care needs that I'm going to talk about right now. Sorry if you can hear the noise of my fridge in the background. It always decides to start to hum when I turn on the camera to film, and there's really nothing I can do about it, so just please excuse that. Okay, so Hoya Varieties. They are also known as wax plants, porcelain flowers, but generally people just call them Hoya. Hoya hoarding or Hoya collecting is a real thing. There are so many different varieties and avid collectors of Hoya out there, and one day I will get to that. Just not quite there yet. Generally, Hoya are characterized by thicker, waxy type leaves. They absorb all the water within their leaves, so they don't actually need watering as often as you think they might. They'll generally tell you when they need watering if the leaves are actually quite limp and quite soft. But if you feel the leaves on your plants and they're still quite firm, and just be careful because they can actually snap very easily if they're quite crispy. Not crispy as in dry, but crispy as in full of water. Just be careful with that, because I have been pressing the leaves before and I've actually snapped them, split them. So just be aware of that if you're checking your leaves to see if they need to be watered. But they don't actually require constant watering, and they don't actually need super high humidity levels, although they'll do really well with higher humidity. But just note that the plants or the varieties of Hoya with the thinner leaves will actually require more watering than the varieties. Oh, like that, I just snapped the leaf. Oh, damn. I need to be gentle with these leaves. Need to not touch them as much. I need to just stop touching the leaves, Judy. But yeah, like I was saying, the Hoya varieties with thinner leaves will require more watering more constantly than those with the thicker leaves. Okay, don't touch the leaf. Hoya actually do flower as well, but I personally haven't had any of mine flower. I think they tend to flower when they are in their absolute ideal position, and they'll tend to flower especially if they are grown or kept outside. So let's talk about light. This is, I'm pretty sure, a Hoya Carnosa. These are 2 tiny little cuttings, I suppose, that I just bought from a nursery. I'm eventually going to pot these 2 up together to have 2 growing out of 1 pot, but it's colder now, so I'm trying to refrain from repotting any of my plants in the colder months. The light requirements for these and all of these in general is that they like lots of bright indirect light. Lighting is very, very important to the Hoya. It's like a group of people. It's very important to the Hoya plants. Hoyas are able to tolerate medium to lower light, but just be aware that they will tend to grow quite leggy and produce way fewer leaves in lower light. So this is an example of that. So it is kind of leggy, as you can see here. I actually had this one a lot longer. It was this long, but I chopped it back and I'm currently propagating the cuttings. This is a Hoya Australis, and as you can see, it's kind of leggy there. It's growing a few growth points up there, but there are no leaves on that because this is in a lower lit area. It does have a few new leaves developing on these, what do you call these? Legs? Vines? But they're still very, very small. And I think if I do move this to a brighter lit area, it's gonna start to grow bigger and happier leaves and not be as leggy, I suppose. So yeah, this is my Hoya Australis. So when it comes to watering, I was talking a little bit about it before, but when it comes to watering, it's really important to let the soil dry out completely between waterings. But when I do actually water them is that I completely drench the soil all the way through, make sure that it's aerated at the top so that the water can reach all the areas of the soil, and then let the water drain out completely through to the bottom. Don't put it back in the cover pot and let it sit in water. They don't like their roots to stay wet. Obviously, when they're receiving getting more light. The more light they're getting, you'll need to water them more as well. So you just need to adjust accordingly your watering of your Hoyas in relation to how much light they're receiving. Really important is to please avoid overwatering. If you overwater your Hoyas, they're gonna turn yellow, they're gonna drop their leaves, and essentially they're gonna drown. When it comes to the colder months, obviously you're gonna want to cut down on your watering because it doesn't dry up as quickly. And yeah, in the winter time, only water when your soil is dry. This is a Hoya Carnosa as well, I think, but of the variegated kind. I actually have two of them because when I was at the plant nursery, I couldn't decide which one I wanted, so I got them both. But the foliage on this is absolutely stunning. I actually have these hanging in my bedroom window. They love it there. It's a lot of actual bright direct light, but I've got them acclimated to that spot, so I think they're going to be okay. The sun isn't too scorching hot in the window at the moment because it is the winter, so I think they're okay in that spot, but obviously I will move them out of that spot once it turns to summer and the heat in the window gets too intense for these plants, but they're okay there at the moment. Hoya Carnosa of the variegated kind, I love how there's a little bit of a pink hue on the white parts of the leaves. So I have them in the window because Hoyas love warmer temperatures, anywhere between 15 to 25, 30 degrees Celsius. So they do love the warmth, they love the light, but it's also important to keep them away from super cold windows. Like I said, I have these hanging in my bedroom window, but the foliage isn't actually touching the window pane because they are quite sensitive to the cold. They do not like that. If the leaves are touching the cold window pane, it can actually burn the leaves, like cold burn the leaves. So I try and keep my Hoya away from the super cold window or super cold drafts coming through the house. I like to make sure that the area that my Hoyas are in is constantly warm or has at least a level of 15 degrees in the house. I try not to let my house get any colder than 15 degrees. I have my heater unit running at a constant 22 degrees day and night. It's just something that I've been testing out recently, and I actually have a very efficient heating unit, so I'm very, very lucky with that, which is why I feel comfortable leaving my heater running even though I'm not at home. I leave it on for the plants. My babies need to stay warm. This is a Hindu rope. Sorry, pardon me, I thought I saw spider mites in there, but it's actually just an actual spider. Ooh, I'm glad I brought this down to make this video. She's in need of a watering. The leaves sometimes tend to go a little bit soft and crinkly when they need a watering. This one hasn't been watered for maybe like a month now, so she's in dire need of watering. Anyway, this is a Hindu rope of the variegated variety, and this is actually one of my favorites. Let's talk about humidity. They're not in like super dire need of humidity like a lot of other plants are, like calathea or alocasias. They can survive in most general households' average humidity, but they will grow a heap more quickly when the humidity is anywhere higher than 60%. I have humidifiers running in my home all the time constantly. I leave them at 75% and just let them run until it reaches the level and then they automatically turn off. But I leave them at 75% and all my plants love it. If you don't have a humidifier, some things that you can do is leave vases of water around your house, or let your plants sit on pebble trays, or you could even group your plants together so that they retain that humidity within the foliage and they're kind of hugging each other and creating that atmosphere within their foliage of humidity. But if you have plants that need higher humidity, like calathea for example, then I would recommend just getting a humidifier. It's really good to invest in one of those if you want to provide the most ideal environment for your plants to thrive in. So that's my Hoya Hindu rope. I have another Hoya Carnosa here, but this one isn't actually variegated. It's got tiny little white speckles on the foliage there and I absolutely love it. It's growing quite quickly. I actually had it all the way down here, but I actually chopped and propagated this in one of my previous propagation videos. It's okay that I did that because it's actually started to push out some brand new growth here as well. Sometimes chopping it back is the most kindest thing you can do for your plants because it encourages brand new growth to start coming out from other points throughout the plant. That's something that you could do to help promote growth as well. In the colder months, it's currently winter here in Australia, I don't actually need to fertilize my plants as often as I would through the growing season, and I would probably hold off fertilizing my Hoyas because they're not actually throwing out a whole heap of new growth at the moment, so I'm just gonna let them be for now. However, when I do fertilize them, I try and use a fertilizer that has a higher nitrogen content because it helps encourage foliage growth. Some people who want to encourage their Hoyas to actually flower could probably use a fertilizer with a higher phosphorus content. However, I generally stick to like a fish emulsion whenever I do water my Hoyas or any of my plants, to be honest. You could also use like slow release fertilizer like worm castings, mix them in with your soil mix. I personally don't use that simply because I haven't been able to source any very easily, and so I just go along the routes of liquid fertilizer whenever I'm watering my plant. And for Hoyas, I generally only do that through the growing season, which is around spring and summer. Now this is my last one, and this is a Hoya pubicalis. It has longer, more elongated leaves than most of this, and it has a little, I think it's a silver speckle pubicalis. Stunning. It's growing quite quickly for me actually. Hoyas actually like to be root bound. That's why I've kept all of these actually in their original nursery pots that I purchased them in. They don't need to be repotted very often because they actually like to be root bound, and no way any of these are root bound yet because they're gonna growing a little bit slowly at the moment. Another thing about Hoyas is that you can actually train them to grow up a pole or up a wall. You can train them to grow upwards. I like the hanging plant type look, type vibe, and so that's why I just let my Hoyas hang. But if you like to have your plants grow upward, you can obviously train these to grow up a pole. And the one last tip I have about Hoyas is that once you find a spot for them that they like, that they're happy in, don't move it. Once they like that spot and they're doing well and they're thriving and they're throwing off a whole bunch of new growth, just leave it there. If it's happy there, leave it there. And if you do want to relocate it and it's not working out for you to have it in that space anymore, the new space that you do move it to, try and replicate the same growing conditions that it had in that original spot that it was happy in. However, once any of my plants are happy in that spot, I leave it there. I don't move them, I just let them be. So yeah, that's my Hoya collection, you guys, and some care tips and growth tips that you might have found helpful in growing your Hoya collection. Let me know in the comments down below if you have any Hoya, what your favorite varieties are, and some varieties that you think I should check out. I know that Hoya collections can be quite extensive, and I'm only just starting out with mine. So leave some recommendations in the comments of some that I should try and find and get and add to my collection. I would love to hear your recommendations. And I just want to thank you guys for watching today's video. I really appreciate you've chosen to spend your time here with me today. Please like the video if you did, subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye!